Well, Carolyn, thank you for being with us today. I am very excited that you've joined the Mayflower music team, and I know that a lot of people in our congregation are looking forward to meeting you in person. But as I say nearly every day, with the circumstances such as they are, that's not going to be possible for a little while. So I'd love to get a little bit of information about you so that people can know you a little bit better. So first and foremost, just tell me a little bit about your background.
So I grew up in the fundamentalist tradition, and my parents got a piano when I was about 4, and they were thinking they would take lessons, then my older brother would maybe take lessons, but I started tinkering out the melody of hymns that I had heard, and so they were like, okay, well, we need to get her lessons, and nobody would take me until I was 5, but then it was, just after that, that's all I wanted to do. I was homeschooled and just practiced piano and read all day. And then when I was 11, I started orchestra in school on viola, and that ended up being my major in my undergrad, was viola performance for a while until I ended up graduating with music biology and chemistry.
Which is maybe not the most prevalent combination amongst musicians, right?
No. And then I worked in a toxicology lab for a while, did not like it, and then I got a job at First Christian Church in Mineral Wells, Texas as pianist and choir director and music director. They sent me to ADM, Association of Discipled Musicians, and then I started learning the organ in July of 2018.
So that is also something that I sort of think will cause some people to take a double take. The fact that you started organ in 2018 and you are now working and actually halfway through a master's degree in organ. That is a really steep and fast learning curve. And what has that been like? How's that worked?
It was a fairly natural transition. So keyboards, my fingers were already dexterous. It's obviously a different technique because you don't have the pedal, so you have to do different techniques to have continuity within the lines. But I could already read all the music. I just had to learn how to use my feet. Again, Baptists don't dance, so that was a bit of a learning curve. But also, like, articulation-wise, I already had, a viola brain is what I call it, when I have to access thinking of articulation, because you have to think of that a lot more with organ than with piano.
Right.
But yeah, it was a pretty natural transition.
And so how long were you in your position in Mineral Wells?
Overall, I was there for about 3 years.
I see. Mm-hmm. And so a little bit more about ADM. I myself had been a disciples musician before coming to Mayflower, so I know what it's like, but give me a little bit of your sense of how that formed the first part of your time when you started to go to ADM conferences.
Well, the first one I went to was in 2017, which was also the General Assembly. Mm-hmm. They didn't have a separate ADM that year, so that was just eye-opening because I hadn't really been in the denomination that long, and I hadn't explored much of churches after I graduated high school and got away from fundamentalism. So that was just eye-opening of what church could be. Mm-hmm. And then the following year, when there was actually ADM, it was just like music camp for grown-ups with my favorite kind of music.
So ADM, I think, plays a bigger role, I think, in your story a little bit, as it related to the way you got interested in organ. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little more about that.
Okay. 2018 was like the first time that I'd really heard the organ live in person during every service that we had. We have some fantastic organists in ADM. I'm sure you know some of them, Herb Buffington. He just wowed me the first night, and I was like, oh, my goodness, that's an instrument. So, and then we heard a recital from Melissa Plumman. So ADM in 2018 was at OCU. Uh-huh. So I stayed on campus and got to know campus then. And yeah, Melissa Plumman gave a recital, and that was it. That was the end. I was like, I need to figure this out. Mm-hmm. And then we had a hymn improv class. There were only 6 people there. I didn't play organ yet, but I improvised on piano for hymns. That's also part of the Baptist tradition. It's just what we did.
Sure.
And so nobody else was really trying anything that she was talking about. So I was like, well, whatever. I have nothing to lose. I don't play this instrument. So I got up and tried. And she was like, well, we need to have a lesson before you go.
I love that.
And so we met before breakfast during the middle of a week. In the middle of July, she came to campus. We had an hour-long lesson, and then she was like, well, you need to study with me. And at that time, I still lived in Denton, so I would come up to Oklahoma City every month, sometimes twice a month, sometimes every other month, and stay with her and her family. Most times, once or twice, I stayed with Steve Thompson and Steve Spitz. But yeah, and we'd have 2-3 hour lessons.
It's amazing.
And then I would just practice at a Presbyterian church in Denton when I could get in between working.
Sure.
And I learned the organ.
And that sort of leads me to the next question, which is, how did you make your way to Oklahoma?
Well, I auditioned for graduate school in March of 2019, got in with the full scholarship, and then I moved here in August.
Absolutely amazing. The timeline of that just intrigues me so much. I think there are many people. Yeah, I think there are many people who would be happy to be able to play one instrument proficiently, let alone 2 or 3, and also sing and be able to pick something up so quickly. And so that leads me to think about what it's like to be a well-rounded musician and be able to play in different styles and appreciate different styles of music. And so now a question that musicians both love and hate, which is, I'd love to know a little about some of your musical inspirations, whether they be composers or performers, or even experiences that you've had that was a sort of a mountaintop for you, anything like that.
IDM 2018 will always be a mountaintop, not only for the recitals that I heard and for the amazing playing and worship services, but we also did a Taizé service.
Ah, yes.
And it was, a bunch of church musicians who could sing in parts, and we were all in a circle at sundown in the OCU chapel, so the stained glass was shining in, there were candles everywhere, and it was just beautiful. So in 2009, I was supposed to go to Europe with Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp for an international orchestra tour, but that was the last pandemic, swine flu, and 3 of us got the swine flu, and so we got, quarantined in the basement of a hotel, and that was off. So we went in 2010, and that was a mountaintop of playing Elijah by Mendelssohn, the full oratorio with a full choir.
Amazing.
And then playing, other orchestral rep all around in cathedrals and gymnasiums in a couple of places, but the cathedrals were the best. That was a mountaintop. Those are the big ones.
Yeah, and what about composers or performers that you find? You mentioned Herb, of course, as a friend and a sort of someone that you're familiar with, but what about in a general way, either performers or composers?
Marcel Dupré as a performer, Langlais and Vierne, French composers and performers because they were blind.
Right.
And that's just amazing to use all of your limbs and not be able to see, and also compose music and also play music. And I believe it was Vierne, it could have been Langlais, I get them mixed up quite a bit, who died at the organ.
Was Vierne.
In Notre Dame.
That's
yes,
right.
Vierne. And I'm playing his music for Sunday.
Oh, fantastic.
But yeah, he passed away while playing at Notre Dame with his left foot on that low E. And it was just, that's how he went out, and what a way,
Right, exactly.
My professor is a huge inspiration, just as she's probably the best person I know. And then she brings all of that to her music and playing and to her instruction and to her support and mentorship. And I've just never had a teacher mentor scoop me up like that. And it was just fantastic. I don't have enough words for her. Stephen Bizard in Chicago is very, very inspiring. So really anybody, I haven't really come across anybody that I just loathe. I think there's something good about everybody.
So you think there's something that can be learned from any musician?
For sure. And
That's
even
fantastic.
non-musicians, because they have a different set of ears too.
Sure, sure. I remember studying Charles Ives and the inspiration that gave him the idea to have cacophonous music that was designed to sound like a racket, if you will, all at once. And it was his father's church music circles and the work that he did in church. And there was a famous phrase, don't pay too much attention to the sound or you might miss the music.
Right.
And while sound is certainly important and something that we cultivate at Mayflower, we also really do pay attention to people's music and the way that that flows through and what it can mean and what the passion is like. And one of my favorite quotes is, when we sing, we pray twice.
Right.
And it's a wonderful, I think a wonderful addition anytime we can appreciate music that comes from any source.
Right, and that's how I calm my nerves a lot too, is it's not about the notes on the page, it's not about what you're physically doing, it's the spirit that you're communicating and the story you're telling.
Exactly. Well, plenty of stories have been told in Mayflower before with the various music that we've done, and particularly on the instrument, the Sebastian Glück organ that's in our sanctuary. And so I know you've had an opportunity to get to know it a little bit. And as I mentioned, lots and lots of people invested in making the instrument and the room compatible with each other and to make the most joyous sound possible. And I'd love to have some of your initial reflections on the instrument itself.
Ugh, it's wonderful. I love playing it. I love playing in that room. I love singing in that room. I love playing viola in that room. Just the room is awesome. And then the organ itself is great. There are so many different colors that can be brought out, so it's great for French symphonic music, early Baroque, classical, although there's not much classical music for organ.
Right.
It's great for anything I've tried on it. I can get the sound that I want, which is just top notch. That's
and so
not usual.
that is something that, being familiar with organ, I understand very well, but go a little bit more into detail for someone who might not realize that every organ is different and it's not always possible to get the sounds you need to pull off a piece in the way you'd like.
Right. So there are different families of sounds within an organ. There are principal ranks, which is the normal just organ sound that you'd be familiar with. There's flutes, a little bit softer. There's strings, which sound, allegedly, they try to sound like a string instrument. There's reeds, which are the big, kind of brassy sounds. Even brass stops are a reed.
Mm-hmm.
There's really deep bass. There's really itty-bitty pipes that are like this long that you can barely hear, almost like a dog whistle.
Mm-hmm.
And this organ just has all of them, plus a cymbal string,
Right.
which is the little ting, 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 tinkles.
So it's the bells that you can turn on and
Mm-hmm.
off. That,
Mm-hmm.
and many people don't know that that is literally a bell,
Yeah.
a series of bells
Mm-hmm.
actually that rotates. They think it's some kind of digital sound, but those are legitimately bells that are
Mm-hmm.
up in the organ loft itself.
And I have a great Christmas piece that I'm going to use them on.
Oh, that's
So-
great. I know that there are many people who will appreciate that
Mm-hmm.
specifically.
But it's just great that, there are really deep sounds that can be done on the manuals.
Mm-hmm.
And the feet can, go high in the register, so you can do anything.
So you can do things from different places,
Mm-hmm.
whereas with some instruments you might be limited based on
Mm-hmm.
what's in each division to a specific area.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Or the different quality
Sure.
of the stops within the divisions that may just make you not want to use them because they may
Right.
not sound good, or they may not balance well. And this organ is very, very well balanced.
Well, well balanced is something that instrument can certainly be attributed to, but I don't know that the congregation as a whole would consider itself well balanced. We say we're a group of heretics and misfits and everything in between. And so with that in mind, what do you think about coming to work at Mayflower? What are you excited about? Tell me a little about that.
Well, I heard about Mayflower well before I moved here, just as a church, because I was asking my professor. I didn't know if by the time I got here I'd be, good enough to get a job. So I was asking her, where could I attend? Where should I try to find work? Stuff like that. And she mentioned that Mayflower was going to be looking for somebody soon. She said it would be a steep learning curve. At that point, that was well over a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
When is this? It was about a year ago.
Sure.
And so I didn't apply yet, but she said that this would be a really good fit because she knew me, because she was also my mentor, not just my organ teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So she knew my theology and what I was looking for. And she said that this was a very, very open, welcoming, just diverse church that was, still traditional
Mm-hmm.
liturgically, but very progressive in the views and politically active with causes that I care about. And that immediately piqued my attention. So I've had my eye on Mayflower for quite some time.
That's a great thing to hear. I think you will not be disappointed in that regard at all. Well, what piece have you been looking forward to playing, maybe more than any other, now knowing what the instrument can do?
Well, I was thinking German immediately.
right.
I know that Glick is actually a New York company, American, but
Right.
German name. So I was thinking, okay, German. And I recently learned about the North German preludium style.
Mm-hmm.
And that is all about exploring the ranges of the instrument. Because at that time, the organs were the technological
Right.
things in the cities,
Absolutely.
in their trade hubs. And that is what drew people in and demonstrated the wealth and power of the cities. And so that was a time of huge explosion of music.
Mhm.
So I've been looking forward to playing Buxtehude, who also taught J.S. Bach.
Outstanding.
The whole point is just to explore the different dimensions, the different dynamics, the different capabilities of the instrument.
Great. Is there any chance you could do a little of that for us today?
Mhm.
Great. That would be wonderful. Well, thanks so much to Carolyn for providing this fun interview and tiny snip of what she'll be doing for us on Sunday mornings and other opportunities at the church as well. I know that you look forward to meeting her, and I have to tell you, having met her and spent just the smallest amount of time with her, I know she's a great addition to the Mayflower family.